the hammer of the Cossacks. That was his nickname in Ukrainian. His theory was, as they say over here, drown the rebellion in blood. Okay? Notice he knew exactly what he was dealing with, and he knew in these parts of the world, you're not dealing with the United States of America. It's not the Democrats versus the Republicans. A fights B, A kills B, or A gets killed by B. That's just the way it goes. And so he is not taken in by the deception of the Cossack ambassadors. You can read the subtitles and see yourself what's going over here. Go ahead. You can play it. I'm asking you to forgive us for what we did. There's Prince Jeremy. Yeah, does it work? As you see, as a prince, he lives like a king almost, with the commanders who attacked our forces, signed by Khmelnytsky, the Cossack leader, the hetman. And there's the prince, and there's the deceitful ambassadors of the Cossacks. He let a pole go. You understand what that means? Let them feel they're dying, torture them. And he's correct. He says, this is all a plan of Khmelnytsky's to lull you into security. Here will be the only reference to the Jews in the entire novel. See that? Escort my wife, the nobles, and the Jews to Zalmash, to a safe area, then hurried back. Now you understand when he says, we'll make ourselves known in the Ukraine, meaning we're going to kill everybody. So this is what happens. So this is the world in which the Jews who lived in this part of the world had to deal with. All right, now I'm going to try to stick to my time over here. So let me share with you what happens next, which is the famous tragedies. The Jews ran away to two big fortresses. One was Nemirov and the other was Tolchen. These were powerful fortresses. When the Khmelnytsky heard that the Jews had run away to Nemirov and they had a lot of gold and silver, and that the city itself was powerful and wealthy, and it was a rich Polish city and all the rest of it, so he immediately sent one of his generals, whose name was Kirvanos, with 600 men, Sholchicher, with swords, and he wrote to the people of the city saying that they should be on his side, the people inside over there. And the point is, they attacked the city on Chav Sivan, on the 20th of Sivan. The Jews see the masses of the Cossacks. You'll perhaps see a little bit later what I'm talking about. But they couldn't tell from a distance who's coming. Is it a Cossack army or a Polish army? And what the Cossacks did was they, were trying to do all kind of tricks. And the Jews, as I say, locked themselves up in the fortress. And the Cossacks did a ruse de guerre, a trick of war, and they put on Polish flags, and the people of the city who were on their side, in other words, the Ukrainians who lived in the town, said, oh, there are Polish soldiers, open the gates, and they came into the gates, and as soon as they did, then they realized what happened over here, and the Cossacks went on a rampage. They entered the city with swords, and with spears, and with pruning hooks, and with sticks, and they killed the Jews right and left. This is the famous massacre of Nemirov. They raped everybody, all the women. A lot of the women jumped into the moat surrounding the city to drown themselves rather than fall in the hands of the enemy. That these Cossacks shouldn't seize them. Many of the men tried to swim. They jumped into the water, but they were shooting at them and they killed them. Notice they didn't get away. It didn't work. Vayisham Rosh Yeshiva, the Kak Nemrov, Rabbi Chiel, Michal, Rabbi Aaron Lezer. There was a famous Rosh Yeshiva there that we talked about last week. All these towns at yeshiva, where they're considered the Chashva people. So he did call Torah Kol Baal Peh. He knew the Shas and Chochmah Solomon. He knew secular studies, and V'dar Shlem b'Shabbos Shlofnei Agzera. And he had given a speech the previous day with Shabbos, and he said, "Listen, we might find ourselves in a situation in Kiddush Hashem." He told it to him straight, like it was. And he said, "I want everybody to agree that we're going to go down. We're not going to convert. We'd rather sacrifice our lives." And they did. And he tried to jump in the water and swim away, but and he was seized by a Cossack. And he said, "Don't kill me, I'll give you money." And he took him to his house, and the Cossack took the money and let him go. And he and his aged mother went and hid in another house a day and a night, 2 days later. But then by the end of 2 days, they killed everybody regular, and they started like the Nazis, going around from house to house, look for people who's hiding. And so, realizing he's not going to survive, he and his mother ran to the Jewish cemetery. Said if they'll die on a base olam, as it were. And that's when as soon as they got there, one Cossack came there, and he was Topher Min Olam. He had been a shoemaker, the Cossack had, and he took a stick, and he, killed him by hitting him and his mother with the stick. He beat them both to death. The mother said she should die first. He didn't listen. He killed him, and then there. And after 3 days of continuous killing, they finally allowed some Jews to be buried or something like that. And he said the interesting thing is that in this massacre and in some of the others, a lot of women, especially young women and middle-aged women, weren't killed. They were raped. They were taken as slaves. They were doing, maybe you might say a fate worse than death. But the worst things they did apparently was to the men. It's their mentality. This is, their idea of chivalry. Okay, and here comes a very famous story that is retold 1,000 times. It's perhaps the most famous story of Zigzeres Tach V'Tat. Ma'aseh B'riba Achas Yifas Torah, and it was a certain girl who was beautiful, from a Chashva family. And she was taken as a concubine to marry the Cossack. He fell in love with her. And before he could do anything with her, she told him deceitfully, "I know magic. After all, the Jews are all sorcerers, as the devil's apprentice, so it's magic. And what's the magic? I know a certain incantation, like the Emperor Jones, can't shoot me. It's impervious to bullets, like Superman. And he said, "I don't believe it." He says, "You don't believe me? Shoot me, I'll prove it to you. Shoot me with your pistol, you'll see nothing will happen." He was like amazed. He figured she must be telling the truth. Why would she say anything like that? And so he shot her and killed her, which is what she wanted. You understand? And he did it that, as I said before, the whole point is that she did in order that to die al Kiddush Hashem rather than fall into what she obviously considered a fate worse than death. Okay. There's one more piece of this, and that's what happens in Tolchin. Maybe I'll save that for next time. Let me just make the following point, and that is that when Prince Jeremy finds out about all this, and he's withdrawn, so when Nemirov is killed, some other towns are killed, and he meanwhile was massing his forces, as you saw, he brought the dragoons back. So Gamadukas Vishnevetsky, they were over across the border in Lithuania. Kishishama Davar, when he heard what happened, he was very distressed by what had happened to the Jews in Nemirov, because that was his city. He says, "These are my Jews." He massed 3,000 men, and he, swore revenge. And he won't rest until he bathes in their blood. Which, if you see over here, that's it. From the famous movie, this is true. Here he takes an oath in front of everything that's sacred to him, to bathe in their blood, to drown the rebellion. And the Poles love this. This is, I tell you, the Eastern Europe is not Western Europe. Principally. Having raised my sword against the roguery. And drown old peasant rebellions in blood, which is exactly what it says in the Yevei Mitzvah. And so what ends up happening is he launches a counter-invasion in which they go town by town, city by city, anywhere they found, if in the town they found anything that had belonged to a Pole or a Jew. In other words, if there was a piece that fell in the town, that's it. How'd you get it? We know you got it. Killed everybody in town, burned down the buildings, tortured them slowly, or roast them over fires. The same thing. You understand? And this is how things were going on in May and June and July and August of 1648. We call this Xeris Tach V'Tat. It goes on for 2 years and a little bit past that as well. So you see that the Jews were living in savage times and savage areas, and they relied, when they could, on outside help. But as I'll try to demonstrate next time, surprisingly, there were a lot of Jews with 22s, as they say. There were a lot of Jews who had guns and were fighters. As I told you before, the type of person who ends up becoming an arrendator, who ends up with a business plan to be the governor or the ruler or the dictator of all the peasants and animals in 300-mile area, is a tough son of a gun. He's not a Kollel guy learning a Baba Kama. You don't succeed in being that kind of business manager. It's the same. I mean, I'm gonna use an example. The people who get in these, who go collecting in slums and things like this, you have to be very tough, or don't get into it. And so, refined people and people who are very civilized, don't like violence, and therefore don't walk around with knives and swords and guns all over the place, don't get involved in these business. But Shmerel and Beryl and Yankel that I described the other day, or today, do. And so we're going to see next time what happens when they become involved in the battles against the Cossacks to save their own lives. And the Cossacks will then resort to various stratagems to try to undermine the position of the Jews as fighters so as to weaken the Polish side. So we see that this was a devastating period in history, and a few months before everything had been great. This is part one, and I hope to continue the next part next Tuesday.